larger is up to the individual who comes through the doors. And so what we wanted to do was help the business place be more successful with their clientele. So the exchange was, if we had the opportunity to meet their clientele, work with the navigators, who are those people who actually have face-to-face contact with the clientele, if we were able to be part of that process, then working with the navigators and working with the clientele, we could give feedback together. It was a collaborative approach in order to help them be more successful at being navigators.
Perfect. Trey, what do you think the students get out of this 1 week session?
Well, we have a number of goals. The first is Ubuntu. In fact, the module is called Ubuntu, and that means I am because you are, and you are because I am. And it's around the sistership and brotherhood that exists in South Africa today and has existed for a very long time, of helping each other, and we're all connected. And so I wanted my students to understand themselves as individuals, how they're connected with their families, how they're connected to their organization, how they're connected to their work, their community, but also how they're connected as 180 students. And in the case of South Africa, how they're connected to the business place and to the clientele, who are the people living in Joburg, living in Alex Township, living in Soweto. So that was the first goal, Ubuntu. After Ubuntu comes living in the question. One of the reasons we picked the positive deviance approach for the first module is positive deviance has in its very clear framework a taste, literally like an appetizers of all the main courses, a taste of what's going to happen in the 180 program over the year. It gives them a flavor of what's to come, and in a very short, intensive time frame. And living in the question is one of the things that came out right away. Who asked the questions? What questions do we ask? Are our questions correct? Because one of the lessons that we will learn in modules 2, 3, and 4 is that we often ask the wrong questions, and that we need to reframe our questions in a context that's meaningful and relevant to the people we are creating concepts for. So that was the second point. Living in the question. And living in the question is not a comfortable state. It's uncomfortable because you don't have your answers. The models don't work properly. The way you think it is not the way it really is. And so you have to live in a state of discomfort. And learning to live in the question and learning to live in that discomfort instead of immediately going for a solution is where you allow yourself to get that creative process going, and you're able to come up with concepts that are meaningful and relevant to the people. And then finally, we had positive deviance as a element to the program. And positive deviance is really a tool. It's only a tool. It is a tool that was created by Jerry Sternin, and it's a tool that helped him deal with issues in a very difficult situation and find ways to break out of a traditional pattern of process. Now, the positive deviance is only one toolkit in many, and learning to be adapted, learning to be flexible with it was a key learning for the module.
Perfect, thank you very much indeed. And talking about...
You may have to come back to that.
Yeah. Talking about the 180 Academy,
yes.
Can you please give us a statement on the structure of the education?
The structure of the education, 180 Academy, have I talked to you about how it was created before?
Nope.
So maybe that's a place where I can do that. To understand the structure of 180 Academy, you have to understand the history of how 180 Academy came to be. And what happened was that there were a consortium of some of the top companies in Denmark that got together and argued that the education that exists in the world today, not just in Denmark, was not meeting the needs that the companies had in a rapidly placed global world. And if you look at the situation today, these are companies that can afford to send their employees anywhere in the world for an education. And they just weren't finding that those educations were helping the employees in a practical way to get their jobs done and to do a successful job at their company. And we're talking business schools, we're talking engineering schools, we're talking design schools. There's nothing wrong with those schools in terms of learning a skill set, but the question is, does that skill set actually meet the needs in today's modern world? The argument became that the education, and this argument is something that I've reflected on quite a lot in the work I did as a researcher, was that many of the models today in companies are created from a system from the Industrial Revolution that doesn't work today. We are no longer there. We are living in a world that is moving so quickly that we need to be able to grasp on and adapt and be flexible to change in order to be successful in our companies. And that skill set is just not being taught. There's a paradigm shift that's occurring. So what the companies decided was they couldn't wait for this paradigm shift to show up in the education model. They basically wanted to create a school that met their needs so that they could create concepts that were meaningful and relevant to the people of the world today. And they also wanted the flavor of how do you really become global. So having that as a background, the idea was very much that you cannot learn in a classroom. What was often happening, and in the case of master programs, MBA programs, is you pay for a student to go to one of those programs, and a number of things happen. The first thing that happens is that maybe that person gets a certificate, and that employee gets a certificate, but quits his job right afterwards because he's going to take a job somewhere else that'll give him more money. So there's no return on investment for sending a student to an executive MBA program. The second thing that might happen, you send a student to the executive MBA program, but you don't give her enough time to digest the information. So she only ends up with a certificate, but really doesn't have a way to process that information and bring it back to the company, which is the purpose of sending a student to a program. So again, no return on investment. The third and the worst possibility is the person actually learns something and is so excited, comes back to the program and says, we should do this, we should do that, and has no band behind them. And in fact, people are going, oh, leave me alone. Oops. Leave me alone. And don't... Wait a second. The third way, so the worst situation is you actually send an employee to a program, they learn something, they're excited about it, and they come back and they meet a wall because nobody else has been in the program and nobody else cares. And they get so disillusioned, they either leave the company or revert back to really sad behaviors or unhappy behaviors. And they haven't brought back something, so there's no return on investment. So we had two issues to deal with. One was return on investment. How do we get return on investment? And the way we decided to do that was create a program that was not only theory but mixes practice in at all times. And the homework assignments is a company project, a live company project, bringing back immediate return on investment. The students are required to have a mentor who is a person of influence in the company. They're required to create a band in the company of a multidisciplinary band that and what we like to say is not people who are the usual suspects, but people they would never expect to have in the band. One of my students has a receptionist as part of her team to come up with new ideas for the company. So immediate return on investment, you're working on a project that's live in the company, so you get to practice the toolkits that you've been learning out in the field. At school, and through the modules, what happens is the students are grouped together, again in a multidisciplinary group, people who they normally wouldn't work with, and they're in that group, they have one 180 project. The 180 project only has one goal. It has to deal with healthy living,